Hi there. This is video 3 of how to make a remote robot with the Hummingbird robotics kit and NetsBlox. And in this video, we're going to go over how to configure the client program, which is the program that you will send to anyone on the internet to program your robot. So to do that, first go to our Make Your Own Remote Robot tutorial, and you'll see that there is a pre-made client project that you can use as a starter file. So I'm going to open that up. And the first thing I'm going to do is save this as a client file that to give it a unique name. So I'm going to call this one littlebot client, and I will save it. And then I will also click open, and so that I can get into that menu again, and I will share it. Okay, so now it is published, which means anyone will be able to go and visit it. And then you can click open again if you'd like. The next thing I'll want to do is set the ID to the public role ID that I got from the server file. So here's my server file. It may take a second to load. And this is the file that we edited in the last video. Let's see, there we go. And I'll want to click here as a reminder to get my public role ID. The other thing I'll want to do in the server file is actually start the connection. So I'll do that by clicking on the green flag. And you know that the server file is running, the program's running, if your microbit shows a red check. Okay, so now going back to the client file, I will set my ID to robot at littlebot example at, in my case, my username is hummingtom, so I'm going to set my ID to that. And then I'm going to delete this because I don't want my users to necessarily change that block. Now, one thing that's interesting about NetsBlox and Snap as well is if the browser window isn't visible on a desktop, the program isn't running. And I need my server program to be running. So I'm going to make my server program visible by creating, like, basically clicking and dragging it into a new window and just kind of trying to make it smaller. And then I'll also make my client program visible at the same time. So now this is the client file, and over here is the server file. So I can test if things are working by clicking the C key or clicking this block. And if it says connected, that means that there is a connection established between the client and the server. And I can actually see that because my microbit now shows a red X, which means no one else programmed this microbit right now. It's being used, or this Hummingbird kit right now. So now all I want to do is change the client file to make it more appropriate for my users and my robot. So I like to start people with a little pre-made project. So in my case, I think that project should be to make the head kind of nod back and forth. So I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to make a little project here. Kind of put some weights between the servo instructions. Oops. And now if I run this project, it's actually running. And so what's important to note here is the client file isn't sending these commands to move the servos directly. It's sending them to the server file, and then the server file is sending the commands directly to the robot. So now the other thing I like to do is add some blocks that are useful for programming this particular robot. So I'm going to just edit some of the blocks that are down here. You know, wait is useful. A repeat until might be useful. And a position servo 2 and a position servo 1 block. Those are probably useful in this case. So I'm just going to put these out here as sort of a starting point for people to play with, so that if you just click on one of these blocks, you can actually see it happen in real time. And then I also like to change this comment to reflect the reality of the robot. Oops, I didn't mean to actually get rid of that. Okay, so this robot has 2 outputs, and you want to describe the outputs. You can say position servo 1 tilts the head, range is 90 to 130. Position servo 2, let me move this over a little. Oops. Has a range of 0 to 170. And then you can change these tips if you need to, or if you want to add any additional tips. All right, so now I have this Littlebot client, and I'll save it again just to make sure that this doesn't get forgotten. And then in order to share this, we've already made it shareable, right? So we've gone here, and Littlebot client is in bold, so we know that it can be shared. But the link construction is a little bit complex, and I've given you kind of a starter for how to make that link in the Make Your Own Remote Robot tutorial. So it's under Changes to Client. You can now share this file by using the following link. So you can click on that link, and you'll want to edit your username to be whatever your username is, and then your project name, which in this case is Littlebot Client. And then if you click on that, it will open that, and this is the link that you can now distribute to anyone on the internet to program your robot. So you want to, just to test, you can disconnect over here. And now if I go over here and I hit connect, it'll connect, and if I hit the green flag, it'll start my project again. And that's it. That's how you set up the client file for use with a Hummingbird remote robot. And once you have that link, you can send it to anyone. If you are teaching a Zoom classroom, or you want a student to program a robot that you've got while you've got a live classroom, you just send them that link and they should be ready to go. Yeah, and so in the next video, we'll talk a little bit about special concerns that are needed when you're thinking about having a robot that is 24/7 live streamed, and how you might set that up and what kind of technology you might use for that.